I was looking through our research stack today, and I found an article that just completely blew my mind.
Oh, yeah. What was it about?
Well, let me ask you, the listener, a question. Have you ever been in a crowded room and told someone to just, pipe down?
Right, yes.
Or maybe you were out celebrating a promotion, raising a glass with your friends, and you offered a cheerful bottoms up.
I mean, we all say that.
Exactly. But if you have, you might not realize it, but you are speaking the language of a salty sea dog.
Oh, that is wild.
Yeah, without even knowing it, you are throwing around the jargon of the 18th century high seas.
It is incredibly stealthy how these phrases have survived in our daily lives. I mean, we use them completely divorced from their original context.
Totally.
Which, as our sources point out, was usually rooted in incredible peril, deception, and, well, sheer survival.
And tracing that survival is basically our mission for this deep dive.
It's a great topic.
We are unpacking some fantastic research that outlines 7 everyday nautical words and phrases that have secretly anchored themselves right into our modern vocabulary.
Anchored. I see what you did there.
I couldn't resist. But we're going to trace these idioms back to their watery origins, and there is no sailing jargon required here.
Good. Keep it simple.
Just a fun, enlightening journey into what is basically a hidden museum of everyday language.
Yeah, it really is a living museum.
It is. And what we're going to find is that the daily grit, the outright deception, and the sheer danger of maritime history still completely shape the way you and I speak today.
Every time we speak, we are casually dropping these historical artifacts right into our sentences.
Yeah.
Because the maritime world was its own isolated universe.
Yeah.
It was governed by extreme, often brutal conditions.
Very true.
To survive it, sailors developed a highly specific way of communicating, and it's just amazing how that language bled onto the mainland and just stayed there.
Right. So let's start with the darker side of things.
Right.
Because the reality of the 18th century maritime world was that survival and, frankly, just getting people onto the ships in the first place relied heavily on trickery.
Oh, absolutely.
This whole environment birthed idioms we now use for deception or revelation, which brings me to that cheerful toast I mentioned earlier.
Bottoms up.
Yes, bottoms up.
And
We say it today right before we sample a drink, usually to celebrate something. But looking at the sources, the origins were not exactly a celebration.
no, not at all. To understand this, we really have to travel back to 18th century England and look at the state of the Royal Navy.
Okay, set the scene for us.
It was this massive, hungry machine that constantly needed manpower to maintain its global reach.
Right.
But life on a wooden sailing ship back then was unimaginably brutal. I mean, we're talking about cramped, damp quarters, rampant diseases like scurvy.
Oh, scurvy sounds awful.
It was terrible. Plus grueling physical labor and the constant threat of being flogged for just minor infractions.
So I'm guessing people weren't exactly lining up at the recruiting office with a resume.
Precisely. The Navy was chronically shorthanded, so they had to get creative and often ruthless with their recruitment.
How ruthless.
Well, formally joining the Royal Navy was known as taking the King's shilling. A shilling was a coin equal to 1/20th of a pound.
Okay, got it.
If a recruit accepted that shilling,
Yeah.
usually as an advance on their wages, they were legally bound.
The contract was sealed?
Exactly. You were in the Navy.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because
Okay.
it wasn't a standard job interview where you sign a piece of paper, right?
Not even close.
The recruiters, who were essentially press gangs, would go out into the towns looking for targets.
Yeah, literally hunting for guys.
So, listener, picture this. You are just a regular guy, completely exhausted after a long day of physical labor, sitting in a dimly lit, noisy pub.
Just trying to relax.
Exactly. You order a pint of ale, which back then was typically served in an opaque pewter or ceramic mug. You can't see through it.
Right.
Unbeknownst to you, a Navy recruiter is sitting nearby watching you. And when you aren't looking, he surreptitiously slips a shilling into your drink.
Right into the mug.
Yeah. And because the mug isn't glass, you don't see it sink to the bottom. You just want your drink. So you drain your ale, and suddenly you feel cold metal tap against your lip.
The shilling has physically touched your mouth.
Yes!
And according to the absolutely ruthless, twisted logic of the Royal Navy at the time, that physical contact was good enough to constitute acceptance.
That is just insane.
It really is. You took the King's shilling. You are now the property of the Navy, and you are being dragged onto a ship.
Listening to you say that, it actually reminds me of, when you download a new app and you just blindly click, I agree on 100-page terms of service agreement without reading a single word.
Oh, yeah, we all do that.
Taking a sip of that ale was the 18th century equivalent of blindly clicking. I agree. Except instead of giving away your email address, you suddenly find yourself drafted into a war zone.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
The fine print was literally hiding at the bottom of your beer.
It was a staggering level of deception. Your life is fundamentally altered in an instant just because you finished your drink.
Wow.
But the people on the shore, the pub owners and the bartenders, they realized their customers were being literally stolen out from under their noses.
And if they lose customers, they lose their business.
Exactly. So they fought back with industrial design. They started manufacturing and serving ale in clear-bottomed glass jugs.
Oh, that is brilliant. A simple technological fix to a massive social problem?
It was a vital survival mechanism for the working class. If your glass has a transparent bottom, you can hold it up to the light in the pub before you take a drink.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah. So the phrase bottoms up wasn't originally a cheer to drink heartily. It was an urgent, life-saving warning from your friends.
It meant literally lift the bottom of your cup up and check it for a hidden coin.
Check it for the shilling before you dare to let that liquid touch your lips.
From a terrifying warning of being kidnapped by the military to a fun Friday night toast, that's just wild to think about.
It really is.
But this deception didn't start once you were forced onto the ship, right? Because once you were actually out on the open ocean, trickery was still a primary tool for survival.
Oh, definitely.
Our sources point out that this is where we get the phrase, to show your true colors.
Yes, a classic one.
Today, we use this when someone finally reveals their true nature. Like a friend who betrays you, and you say, well, they finally showed their true colors. It almost always has a negative connotation.
What's fascinating here is how literal that phrase was on the high seas, and how it ties directly into the sheer isolation of maritime travel.
Tell me more about that.
Well, colors referred exclusively to the flags flown on seafaring vessels. You have to imagine the ocean before radar, before radio communications, before GPS.
Right, you're completely cut off.
The vast ocean was a terrifyingly huge, lawless place. When a lookout spotted another ship on the horizon, it could take hours for the two vessels to close the distance.
And you just sit there waiting.
Yeah, and during that time, you had absolutely no idea who they were. Visual identification was a literal matter of life and death.
And the flag, the colors, was the only way to broadcast which country a ship belonged to.
Precisely.
But if you are a pirate or a privateer or a smuggler, you definitely do not want to broadcast your identity.
No, that would be bad for business.
Right, you are up to no good. And if a merchant ship sees the Jolly Roger coming from 10 miles away, they are going to turn around and run or start loading their cannons.
Exactly. If you are a pirate, your entire business model relies on getting close to your prey without them fleeing.
So what do they do?
They engaged in the ultimate form of maritime identity theft. Pirate ships would hoard flags from various powerful nations.
Oh, I love this.
If they spotted a Spanish galleon heavily laden with gold, they might hoist a Spanish flag or perhaps a French flag to look like a friendly or neutral vessel.
So it's a disguise.
Yes. They disguised their true nature by hoisting whatever flag benefited them most in that exact moment to lower the target's defenses.
So they sail right up, totally unthreatening. The merchant ship crew breathes a sigh of relief. And then what?
At the very last possible second, right when the ships are too close for the merchant vessel to maneuver away or fire effectively, the pirate captain orders the fake flag dropped.
And they raise their actual flag.
Their true colors. The deception instantly drops, the cannons run out, and the violence begins. It was the sudden, terrifying revelation of their true, aggressive nature.
Wow. So you're tricked into service at a pub, and then you're out on the water, dodging pirates, doing identity theft with flags.
It was a rough life.
The entire maritime ecosystem seems built on deception. But eventually the adrenaline wears off, you're just stuck on this wooden boat, living day-to-day life.
Just the daily grind.
And this wasn't all pirate battles and dramatic reveals. The bizarre, grim reality of the daily routine on a wooden vessel created idioms we now use casually in modern politics and office environments.
Oh, definitely.
Like, I hear the phrase slush fund on the news all the time.
Ah, yes. The slush fund. Today, this term usually means money set aside by a business or an organization for unforeseen needs.
More sketchy stuff.
Exactly. In politics, or if you're dealing with an unscrupulous company, a slush fund is basically synonymous with bribery. It's the secret stash of dark money used to grease the wheels of power.
And its origins trace back to the ship's cook, of all people.
A cook, yes.
On these long voyages lasting months or even years, the crew couldn't exactly swing by a drive-thru or have fresh salads.
No, fresh food ran out fast.
The standard diet was incredibly grim. It heavily relied on salted beef and pork, which was preserved in wooden barrels.
And we aren't talking about nice cuts of meat either.
No. This stuff was so hard and salty, sailors often carved it into little boxes or buttons.
That is just bleak.
It is. To make it even remotely edible, the cook would have to boil these massive chunks of preserved meat in a gigantic pot of water for hours just to soften it up.
It was a culinary nightmare. And as you boil heavily salted, preserved meat, all the rendered fat, the grease, and the impurities would rise to the top of the boiling water.
Sounds delicious.
It created this thick, scummy layer.
The literal slush.
Yes, it was essentially the waste product of an already highly questionable meal.
But the cook wouldn't just skim it off and throw it away, which is what any sane person would do.
No.
Our notes here say the cook would surreptitiously scrape this fat off the top, set it aside in separate barrels, and save it.
Yep, saving up the slush.
Then, once the ship finally made it back to port, he would sell this scraped-off fat to increase his own personal funds.
A nice little bonus.
And wait, I have to push back here because I just cannot fathom the economics of this.
Why not?
Who on earth is waiting at the docks to buy scraped, sweaty, boiled beef fat from a ship's cook? It sounds absolutely repulsive.
It sounds disgusting to our modern ears, certainly, because we have petroleum products and synthetic lubricants.
Okay, fair point.
But in the 18th and 19th centuries, fat, specifically animal fat and tallow, was an incredibly valuable commodity.
Oh, really?
You have to remember the context of the era. Society ran on tallow. You needed it for making candles to light homes, for making soap, and increasingly for greasing the moving parts of early industrial machinery.
So there was actually a massive demand for grease on the shore.
A huge demand. The shore was desperate for tallow. The cook, who wasn't exactly making a fortune on standard Navy wages, saw an economic opportunity.
Oh, you can't blame him.
Right. He skimmed the literal fat off the top of the crew's rations to create his own private, completely unregulated bank account.
It's the ultimate 18th century side hustle.
Exactly.
He's running a secret candle wax empire out of the galley. But you can see the direct line to today.
Oh, for sure.
Just like the cook skimming the fat for his own hidden stash, a modern political slush fund is skimming money off the top for unregulated, often corrupt purposes. It perfectly tracks, even if it does ruin my appetite.
It's a great example of how a very visceral, physical, and frankly unappetizing reality of ship life got abstracted into a white-collar financial term.
Which brings us to another part of the daily drudgery, trying to get some rest.
Always a challenge on a ship.
We mentioned telling someone to pipe down in the intro. Today, you say this when you demand someone be quiet.
Right, like shutting down an argument.
Yeah, you're arguing, things get loud, and you yell, pipe down. But think about the logic of that for a second. An instrument, like a pipe or a whistle, is designed specifically to make noise.
Right.
Why use a noisy instrument to demand silence?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of life at sea, it makes perfect acoustic sense.
How so?
Think about the sonic environment of a massive wooden sailing ship in the middle of the ocean. It is the opposite of quiet.
I can imagine.
You have the deafening, constant roar of the wind, the crashing in the ocean waves against the hull, the intense creaking of massive wooden timbers flexing under stress.
Snapping of the sails, too.
Exactly, the violent snapping of giant canvas sails. Human voices get completely swallowed in that low-frequency environment.
So yelling is out.
You could scream at the top of your lungs, and the sailor, 10 feet away in the rigging, wouldn't hear a word you said.
So if you're the captain or the bosun who is in charge of the crew, and you need to give a critical command, yelling is entirely useless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You needed a sound that operated on a completely different frequency than the low roar of the ocean and the ship.
Something that cuts through.
You needed a high-pitched, piercing sound that could slice right through the ambient chaos. That's where the bosun's pipe comes in.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
It was a primary communication tool. They had different trills and blasts for different orders, like hoisting sails or calling the crew to meals.
And what about bedtime?
Well, one of the most important signals of the day was blown in the evening. It marked the end of the working day, ordering the weary sailors to go below deck and finally get some sleep.
Our sources note that this specific evening routine was formally referred to as piping down the hammocks.
Right. The shrill, piercing noise of the pipe was the absolute command that imposed order and ultimately silence on the crew.
The noise commanded the quiet.
The noise commanded the quiet.
That is just brilliant engineering, using frequency to solve a communication problem.
It really is.
But as we know, that moment of peace below deck, swinging in a hammock, was usually pretty brief. The sea is rarely peaceful for long.
No, it never is.
And that transition from the quiet daily grind back into the chaos of the elements is where we get our most dramatic idioms.
High-stakes stuff.
We are talking about phrases born from the literal mechanics of sailing, battling the wind, and pushing these massive wooden ships to their absolute limits. Let's talk about dominance and danger, starting with the word overbearing.
Overbearing is a fantastic psychological evolution of a physical term.
How do you mean?
Today, we use it to describe a personality type. An overbearing person is someone who voices their own opinions so loudly and aggressively that they just shout down all others in the room.
We all know someone like that.
They dominate this space, leaving no room for anyone else. Or we use it for a sensory experience, like an overbearing perfume or an overbearing spice that ruins a dish.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Nautically, overbearing isn't an adjective to describe a personality.
No, it's not.
It's a highly aggressive, tactical, physical maneuver. When a ship sails directly toward another vessel specifically in order to overtake it, it is said to be overbearing. It's a display of sheer physical dominance using wind and wood.
You have to picture the physics of sailing here. Sailing ships rely entirely on the wind for propulsion. They don't have engines.
Right, they can't just power through.
If I'm the captain of a ship and I want to overtake you, I can't just step on the gas pedal. I have to strategically position my ship to steal your energy source.
You steal the wind.
I have to physically bear down on you, putting my massive vessel, with all its sails deployed, directly between you and the wind. By doing that, I create a massive wind shadow.
Oh, wow.
I'm physically overpowering your ability to move by blocking the wind from reaching your sails.
You leave them dead in the water. It's basically a giant slow-motion game of chicken with hundreds of tons of wood and canvas.
Exactly.
So, to our listener, the next time you're in a meeting and you have that one coworker who just talks over everyone and dominates the conversation, don't just get mad.
Just picture the ships.
I want you to picture them literally sailing their wooden desk aggressively into your desk, blocking your wind to run you off the water. They are physically overbearing you.
It is a very apt metaphor. They are literally cutting off your air supply in the conversation, taking all the energy out of your sails so they can move forward.
But if you are constantly trying to physically block massive ships with your own and maneuvering that aggressively, you risk getting pushed out of the deep water.
And that is a huge risk.
And that brings us to the danger of the coast and the phrase touch and go. Today, we use touch and go for any tight situation with an uncertain outcome.
Like a medical emergency.
Right, like a patient's surgery was touch and go for a while, meaning we might make it, we might not. It's pure suspense.
And its origin is pure suspense, too. It comes from the terrifying experience of navigating ships through shallow coastal waters.
Which they had to do blindly, right?
We take for granted today that ships have GPS, detailed digital bathymetric charts, and sonar to tell them exactly how deep the water is.
They just have a screen showing the bottom.
Right. Back then, they had none of that. They used dead reckoning and dropped a lead line over the side to guess the depth. You were constantly at risk of running aground on a hidden reef or a shifting sandbank that wasn't on any map.
And if you run aground, especially during a storm, your wooden ship gets battered by the waves, it breaks apart, and everyone dies.
Precisely. This raises an important question for the crew. What actually happens in those few seconds when you feel the bottom of the ocean?
The moment of impact.
Imagine being on that ship. You know the water is shallow. You're tense. Suddenly you feel a massive, violent shudder run through the entire wooden hull beneath your feet.
Oh man, that sounds terrifying.
The wood groans in a way you've never heard. The ship abruptly slows down. You've hit the ground. For a split second, your survival relies entirely on the ship's forward momentum and pure luck.
Because you can't just throw it in reverse.
Exactly. The outcome depends entirely on the physics of the impact. Will the ship's hull touch the sandbank and stick, meaning you flounder, you are trapped, and the ocean will tear the ship apart? Or will it just touch and go? Will the momentum be just enough to scrape over the obstacle and carry on safely into deep water?
I can literally feel the anxiety of that moment. You just feel the scrape under your boots, the whole ship vibrates, and the entire crew holds their breath. Touch and stick. or touch and go.
The ultimate suspense.
We use it so casually now to describe a tough project at work, but originally those three words held the absolute weight of life and death.
It was the ultimate coin toss with nature.
And if you do manage to scrape over that sandbank and survive, you need to get the heck out of those shallow waters as fast as humanly possible.
Make a run for it.
Which brings us to our final phrase, and I love this one because it busts a massive modern myth. The whole 9 yards.
Oh, yes, this is a great one.
Now, I, like many people, always assumed this was a sports idiom, specifically American football.
Right, because of the yard lines.
You know, you need 10 yards for a first down, so if you give it the whole 9 yards, you're almost there, but you're giving it everything you've got on the field.
It's a very common, very pervasive misconception.
So it's not true.
Not at all. Logically, as the research points out, 9 yards isn't the whole amount needed to secure another play in football. You need 10.
Oh, that makes sense.
So saying the whole 9 implies that 9 is the maximum, which makes the football math fall apart completely.
So where does it come from?
The much stronger, historically backed theory links it right back to the high seas and the incredible engineering of these vessels.
And it has to do with the mass structure, right?
Yeah.
Break down the anatomy of these ships for us.
Think about the great square-rigged sailing ships of the era, the absolute workhorses of the ocean. They typically sported 3 distinct, towering masts. The foremast at the front, the mainmast in the middle, and the mizzenmast at the back.
Okay, 3 masts.
And on each of those 3 masts, they had 3 separate primary sails stacked on top of each other, usually the course, the topsail, and the topgallant.
Got it. 3 sails per mast.
Now, each of those individual square sails was secured to the mast by a heavy horizontal timber spar. In nautical terms, that horizontal wooden spar is called a yard, or a yard arm.
Okay, so if we do the math based on that anatomy, you have 3 masts. You multiply that by 3 sails per mast. That equals 9 primary sails.
Exactly.
And each of those 9 sails is supported by a horizontal yard arm, 9 yards.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Think about when a captain needed absolute maximum speed.
Like running from a storm.
Maybe they are trying to escape those pirates who just showed their true colors. Or maybe they just survived a touch-and-go scrape with a reef and need to flee that storm. They wouldn't just use a few sails for a casual cruise.
No, they needed everything.
They would order the crew into the rigging to unfurl every single piece of canvas they had available to catch the maximum amount of wind.
They would employ the whole 9 yards, all 9 yard arms actively deployed, catching the wind, pushing the ship to its absolute physical limit.
That sounds intense.
It wasn't just pressing a button. It required massive physical labor from the crew to rig all of that. It was a visual, tangible representation of absolute maximum effort and total commitment to speed.
We use it today to describe giving 100% to a mundane task. I went the whole 9 yards on this quarterly presentation.
Right.
And we are completely unaware that we are mentally hoisting up 3 towering masts of canvas to outrun an 18th century storm.
It truly reinforces that idea of language as a living museum. When we look at all of these phrases together, it's profoundly striking.
It really is.
From the deceptive silver coins at the bottom of a pub glass, to the cook boiling salted beef to skim the fat, to the sheer terror of feeling a wooden hull scrape a sandbank.
It's just incredible.
These weren't just clever phrases. They were survival mechanisms. They were the daily realities of an incredibly harsh, unforgiving world. And by continuing to use this vocabulary today, we are, in a very real way, keeping the memories and the ghosts of those 18th century recruiters, those scheming cooks, and those terrified sailors alive.
It's mind-blowing when you take a step back and think about it like that. The wooden ships themselves rotted away at the bottom of the ocean centuries ago.
Long gone.
But the words they generated outlasted the actual wood and canvas, which leaves me with a thought I just can't shake.
What's that?
If a bunch of wooden sailing ships from the 1700s gave us phrases that are still completely embedded in our language today, what modern technology-based idioms are you and I creating right now, today, that are going to survive hundreds of years into the future?
Oh, that's a great question.
Think about it. Will people in the year 2300, long after smartphones and web browsers or ancient dusty history, still tell each other that they have too many tabs open in their brain?
I bet they will.
Will they say they need to recharge their batteries when batteries no longer exist? What parts of our casual daily slang are destined to become the historical mysteries of tomorrow?
Something to think about.
Next time you find yourself telling someone to pipe down or raising a glass to bottoms up, just remember you are a walking, talking history book. Keep exploring those mysteries.